So, Vihaan, it's so wonderful to have you on FilmeShilmy.com. I think this is your first UK exclusive interview, so thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to do this.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet
And
you.
and lovely to meet you too. And heartiest congratulations as well on Call Me Bae. The show has done very well. It's obviously renewed for season two, and obviously you also have Control coming up as well on
Right.
Netflix. So two back-to-back digital releases, and I think Vihan, it might be right to say that you're someone who I would call the face of this whole digital revolution that's kind of happening because you first began with the Netflix content as well. So how does it feel for you as an actor to really kind of headline some of these titles which are very urban, which are very contemporary, and to do heavily with the digital world out there?
I mean, it feels great. I won't lie. I mean, I think every actor, I think when they start out, just wants to work, and they want to have consistent work and be proud of what they do. And I can say that I have fairly consistent work, and I am proud of what I do. So I think that's an achievement in itself. Obviously, it's a long path ahead, and it's a long road ahead. And there's a lot of stuff remaining. But I think on the point of being the face of this sort of urban sort of stories. I think every actor starts off doing what's comfortable and close to what is natural to them. Um, and for me, a lot of these stories were very natural for me to do. I think there's been a progression where I first played an American citizen in Mumbai.
Mm,
Then I played a very urban sort of Mumbai English speaking 25-year-old. Then I recently played a young again 25-year-old from South Delhi, and then recently I'm playing a techie from Bangalore. I think I'm slowly like taking stuff that's a bit more diverse every single time, and
mm,
I'm working towards a certain point. But yeah, I think there is a resurgence, or not a resurgence. There is a range of urban stories that are being told, which I'm happy to be a part of if I relate to them and I love the script and I love the narrative they're giving.
mm.
So I'm very proud of what I do, and
Okay.
I hopefully will also, and I know I will play characters that aren't so urban. They're more in the heartlands of India, and they're from the different varied and fantastic states that we have, like Bihar, UP, Madhya Pradesh, um, Tamil Nadu. I hope that I can play characters from there as well one day.
Mm. And I think it's very interesting because I think in your one of your initial sort of roles in Netflix series, Internally Confused and Eager for Love, you played a very anxiety-driven character. And I think it's quite fascinating how you're now about to play or be a part of a story which actually talks about the dangers of social media, which again seems to heavily delve into mental health in Control, Vikramaditya Motwane's. Um, so for you, when you are confronted with roles like these, which are very much to do with today's day and age, topics that are very much intrinsic to what it means to be in the digital world and to be the youth of today, do you feel like there's a sense of conflict in a sense where it's almost like an altered reality that you're living on screen because it's something which can exist and can happen to anyone in today's day and age?
Yeah, I think for Eternally Confused, I think I related very hard to the script when I read it because I have been that person. I have been anxiety stricken. I have had certain overpowering thoughts. I've had a very overactive mind. Um, so I immediately picked up on what was being written and the written word. And it was so lovely to have that feeling when you read something, you're like, I wouldn't change a thing. I completely get this. So that's why I think I aligned well with that show and I could do what I did. And the writer and director also came from a similar mindset. For Control, I think it is very important for this film to be made because 3 years ago, when it was being envisioned, it was talking about the possibilities of AI and the future and what might happen
Hmm,
and near future. But now, interestingly, now that the film is releasing, all the stuff it talks about is happening in real time.
hmm,
So the dangers of AI, the face morphing, the control, the way it can possibly we used to manipulate people, all that stuff is happening right now. And it's so important for these films to be made because it just opens you up to this stuff, because you might not necessarily read an article from The Guardian or Reuters, but you might read, or you might see this film, and that might change your perspective on things.
Hmm. I think it is very fascinating as well. Talk to me a bit more about Control then, because I mean, I think it's a very different sort of content for Vikramaditya Motwane. I think he's definitely experimenting a lot as a filmmaker. It definitely seems like that.
Yeah, I think it was so interesting because um, I'm used to seeing him in a certain, like, oh, we're making Udan, which is about like family problems. We're making Trapped, about a guy trapped in a building, he can't get out and he's starving. Making Sacred Games is like intense, like cop drama thriller about that ties into like so many themes. You know, he had AK versus AK, he had Lutera. For me, the first time casting reached out to me and said, there's a film that by Vikramaditya Motwane, we'd like you to test for it. In my head, I was like, I'm doing it. I don't need to hear what the story is. Then I zoned back in after 5 minutes when when he was explaining the story, and he said it's about Joe and Nella, these influencers, and this is. I was like, hold on, Vikramaditya Motwane is making a film about influencers.
Hmm.
I was like, what he can't be directing it? Maybe he's producing it. Maybe surely. And then I got the audition sides and I started reading, and it flowed so well. I was like, oh my God, this is what I recognize. This is the flavor that I recognize. And he was co-writing it with Avinash Sampath, who's a fantastic writer. I tested for it, and I still thought it would be like a slice of life drama.
Hmm.
Then I met him, and he was happy. He said, love your auditions, so on and so forth. Would you like to read the script? I said, sure. I read the script over, I think, within 2 hours in his office that same night. Came out, and I was like, what is going on? Because this was completely different to anything I had ever read or anything that I'd ever even imagined. I thought there's a slice of life drama about influencers. This turned out to be some screen life AI, like, mind bending sort of stuff. And I was so taken aback, and I was like, okay, this is what he's trying to do. And I was so happy that he was trying to do this. And I was just sold. And then in terms of the way he had discussions with us in our meetings between Ananya and I, the way he approached the filmmaking process, the multiple changes he made, how he let us be, the improvs, all that stuff is just very unique to him.
Hmm.
And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, Call Me Bae has definitely evoked a lot of sentiments, I think, in the public. I think a lot of people have loved the series from what I've seen on Twitter. But then I think also I was having a discussion with someone, and I mean they found it quite interesting, but at the same time there was questions that they raised. Because I think when it comes to divorce and it comes to, cheating actually in particular, um it almost they almost felt like it seemed to glorify the idea of cheating and romanticizing the idea of cheating because it's told specifically from the lens of a woman. Whereas if it had been told from the lens of a man, it would have been deemed as misogynistic, as chauvinistic, and all those woke terms that one can think of. Where do you stand on that, Vihan, between the different plethora of comments that's made about Call Me Bae? Do you feel that it glorifies cheating and kind of okays the notion of cheating because it is told from the lens of a woman?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. I think definitely something that we've all thought about. I think it goes back to the basic question of, if we see something on screen, is the film glorifying it? And then there's a question of, how do you really decide what is glorifying and what is just putting a mirror to society?
Hmm.
If you take the example of Animal, like one of the biggest grossers of this year's box office, is it glorifying violence in men? Is it glorifying like having a mistress? Or is it simply showing, as a director said, this person who's this way? I mean, this director has, for example, also spoken a lot about his earlier films like Kabir Singh. There's an ongoing discussion on what, like, are we just showing stuff as is? or do we need to be responsible for what we're showing to people? And there's various schools of thought in this. Now, for example, in Call Me Bae, Bella cheats on Agastya. In Control, Joe cheats on Nella. If the thing is, in every sort of film or piece of content, you're always going to have more time with the lead character that you're following. In that process, because you have more time with it, you understand the motivations more and they get more humanized. And inadvertently, it becomes less abrupt. So, does that mean we're glorifying it? I don't necessarily think so. I think we're trying to, it was more of an understanding of where our lead character has taken the decision she's taken. And I think in Call Me Bae, there was a whole scene where Agastya and Bella discuss how cheating is bad and how she messed up. And she's trying to justify it by saying, "You never gave me any." I said, "What do you mean? I gave you everything you wanted." So there's a whole conversation that follows. So it's not like the audience is just like, okay, she cheated and now it's now he's the bad guy. It's like, okay, they saw both of our perspectives. Obviously, it ends on a note where the lead character, Bella, feels vindicated because that's her journey and that's the point of the show. But I don't necessarily think we're glorifying it or saying it's okay. It's very clearly not okay.
Hmm.
But then we're also saying like, also, but life is complicated and people should pay attention to their partners and listen to their partners and communicate,
Hmm.
which is not necessarily.
Sure. I want to extend this whole social conversation a bit more largely to the industry that we're in at the moment, because I think Hindi cinema in particular is kind of going through this churning period where it's trying to rediscover what it means, what the sort of contents that we're putting out. At this point in time, it seems like, we're seeing contents which are very much either they're really, really working, doing exceptionally well, or they're just completely biting the dust and they're not doing well at all. Um, During such extreme times, and the fact that obviously you're still breaking through and you've had some, even though you've been in this industry for a while and you've done work previously, but now that you're breaking through and you're sort of seeing, even though it's kind of, there's a lot of whataboutery in the industry right now, do you find it quite overwhelming sometimes to really understand what it means to you as an artist or which avenue you're navigating right now because it's so unclear and it's so unpredictable?
Yeah, I think that's the basic sort of fear that a lot of people have with this business, right? It's like, how do I know where I'm going? How do I know where to go in the first place? And how do I know if I'm going somewhere, it's the right place to go this at this moment? I think these are answers that you can never really know. And there's a lot of people who will give you advice and guidance and give you tell you what the right path is. But the right path is I think is at the end of the day something that feels natural and right to you, and you'll feel it like right here. So I'm just doing stuff at the moment um, where I feel like it's not part of a churn, where I feel like I can bring something to a character and I can challenge myself and I can push myself and I am not staying in the same place. Um, and something where I feel like I can leave an impact on the viewer and they can come away from this changed or at least have a laugh. So I think that's my constant goal. And when I read a script, if I relate to it, I'm happy to dig deeper and see how far I relate to it. And I make decisions based on that in terms of what I would like to do next. So that's
Hmm.
my ultimate.
Sure. And I'm also subtly seeing this resurgence of soft chocolate boy heroes also emerging. I think we've seen quite a few contents where that's happened. I mean, I think one of them is also Munja, for example, where I think Abhay Verma did such a fab job in the film where it's kind of made the audience yearn for that soft, gentle sort of uh male characters, like even Lapata Lady Sparsh's character, and that also is a testament to that. How do you feel about this resurgence of such characters? Because I think it's so important that we have a good balance of portrayals. I mean, we've had the dark and grim stuff, but then we're also seeing these very softer and gentle characters really re-emerge on screen as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think they always did. And I think maybe the resurgence is maybe true, but but at the same time, we're seeing that, and we're seeing Animal in the box office, right? And then we're seeing, like, there's always both in various capacities, and both will always continue to exist. But I am, if there is a resurgence of soft boys, I'm happy to see it. It's quite exciting. I think I can play soft boy quite well. Um, I think Eternally Confused was an example of that. Mismatched was an example of that. So I'm happy to. I think it's important to also have this balance of representing all types of men. I think just having one type of man as a narrative is harmful. So it's
Hmm,
always important to have that narrative, I think. And so it's
sure.
nice to see examples of that coming about. And of course, Munja did really well. And Lavta Ladies is now India's submission to the Oscars. So way to go, soft boys.
Amazing. Well, Vihan, let's talk a bit more about your training. I would love to know, because you're from Mumbai, right? Now obviously the narrative is always the same कि मेरे को शाहरुख खान बनना है, मेरे को बड़ा superstar बनना है, वो है. But what was the real essence of you becoming an actor? Why did you really feel intrigued by the craft of acting?
So I think I saw Robin Williams' documentary recently, and he said that it's just really important to be connected to that source. And that source within every person is this sort of need, at least for me, to express, and this need to not necessarily entertain, but to express and maybe be seen. Um, I think ever since I was very young, I have seen the Shah Rukh Khans around me. I have seen stars around me, and maybe I was enamored by that. Maybe I saw KBC on screen growing up for years and years, which is why
Mm,
I idolized that. But after that, at that age, as I went into my teens, there came a maturing of how the power of film can affect people and how it does affect me.
mm,
Art, I feel, is meant to, and this is a quote that a lovely theater teacher of mine told us when we were in college. He said, art is meant to disturb the comforted and comfort the disturbed,
mm,
which is so lovely if you think about it, because it's like, if you're not open to how other people are living their lives, you're going to be disturbed by what you see. But it's important for you to understand that. And if you're living different, and if you feel unseen, and if you feel like an outcast, and you
mm,
see sort of work that validates what you're feeling, you feel seen and you feel comforted. And other people are seeing that and they're understanding you. And that's through a film, and that's through the show. And I thought that's really beautiful. So for me, it's a mix of things. I think there is somewhere a need to express and a need to somehow affect people and be affected myself. Um, and I tapped into that through college and through my training and into everything I do. And
mm,
it's interesting because the deeper I go within myself, the deeper I'm able to touch people watching.
mm. I think also what I find very fascinating. So, I mean, I think you were born in Kolkata, right? But then you were kind of raised in Mumbai. Then I believe you went to Tisch School in New York University as well. Uh, so I think this whole cultural exchange that you've had from India to going to the West and then returning back to India, and then obviously then doing a show like Call Me Bae, which is, I mean, it's unashamedly talking about elitism and how first world problems, might I say, of the upper class in India. When you have this life that you've lived, and then you kind of see the elitist sort of life that we're seeing in Call Me Bae, do you ever have that sense again, like I mentioned earlier, conflict? Do you ever have this dilemma where you kind of see these dual sort of lifestyles, which is maybe contrasted to how you've lived as well,
Dual lifestyles in what exactly?
in reality as well as real?
Yeah, of course. I think living in India, you're constantly aware of how there's a duality between the rich and the poor. And there's obviously scales of rich and poor, and there's gradients, but you're constantly reminded of it. And I'm always grateful for what life has given me and what my parents have given me. I'm aware of my privilege, and I sort of work and align myself accordingly, but I don't take things for granted. Um, I think Call Me Bae plays on that, where it realizes that these are the lifestyles of the ultra rich and famous, and the only way to show this, not only way, but the most entertaining way to show this is to make fun of it.
Hmm.
So it's a very self-aware show,
Hmm.
and that's what works about it because it's poking fun at itself, and it's not like success. It's also it's done in a more obvious way than Succession.
Hmm.
It's more like Schitt's Creek, right? Um, I think that's what's lovely about it because it's also acknowledging that a lot of India will never see the same bags or the same scale that our main character is living in.
Hmm.
So definitely make the person watching this show feel valued and make him feel seen and let him know that we as the makers don't think that everyone lives this way. And we think that sometimes people who do live this way are in their own bubble and we can make fun of them. So it kind of is an inclusive show in an odd way.
Hmm. Yeah, very, very distinct way of looking at it, actually. So I think, look, you've had some. I mean, it's definitely a breakthrough of sorts for you, definitely, and I think it's really wonderful to see you get that opportunity. And I think you've done a very good job in Call Me Bae as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing Control.
Thank you.
Um, what's what's also in the pipeline for you next? I mean, I heard that there's an Applause entertainment show that you're doing. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was it's something I shot a while ago before Control and Call Me Bae actually. So I think the producers are just figuring out some stuff for that. Um, right now we have Control in on October 4th. And then after that I have a show called The Royals, which should come out next year, which is also on Netflix. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of digital stuff that I have been doing.
Hmm. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned the roles. And again, I think it's interesting you spoke about Call Me Bae and how it's also it's kind of not being presumptuous about the show. It's kind of in a way mocking itself and looking at the rich and elite in a very different perspective, in a more comical perspective.
Right.
Also, I think the Royals definitely seems to look at royalty in a very different, distinct perspective as well.
Correct.
So for you, when you're kind of introspecting a lot about the rich and the elite and and that class of society, what has it taught you the most about maybe yourself? Because sometimes, when you look at other things, it reminds you and makes you realize a lot of things about you as well.
Yeah, I think uh I mean, well, I don't necessarily lead the same lifestyle as the person in Call Me Bay and the Royals. But I do think it's taught me to be grateful about what I have. It's taught me to be aspirational towards what can be. And it's taught me that life has issues and challenges regardless of your wealth and status. And everyone has their own uh, shit to deal with. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter who you are. Different problems for different people. At the end of the day, life is life, and struggle makes you stronger, and you have to deal with it. Now, what flavor of struggle you get is up to destiny. But the choice to deal with it with grace and strength is yours,
Hmm.
regardless of who you are or how much money you have.
Hmm. And again, it's such a beautiful cast as well for the Royals. When we're talking about royalty, I think if there's anyone who, at one point in time, because actors are actors, but on television at one point, for me, Sakshi Tandar was the queen of TV at one point in time.
She
Zeenat
still is.
Aman,
She's the queen of
she's
our set. I mean, well,
yeah.
apart from maybe Zeenat Aman, ma'am.
Oh, of course. I mean, Zeenat Aman is if she's the queen, if she's the queen, then she's an empress. I mean, you know,
Exactly.
I mean. I mean, it's just amazing when you're like working with such talents as well. I mean, their experience, I mean, that must definitely rub off on you a lot, though, because they've seen so much and their craft has become polished over time. I'm sure that must have definitely rubbed off on you, right?
Yeah, I think I'm constantly observing them on set. I'm constantly like keeping my eyes peeled. I'm constantly just even trying to chat with them whenever we have some time and in between breaks and whenever they feel chatty. They're just so graceful. They can they realize they're just so I mean they're so graceful that they're just there like amazing human beings. They're Sakshi Tanwar is just like a masterclass in just patience. Like she will be called to set and she will sit in her mark for as long as she's needed. And she won't question a thing. And she'll just be there and she'll be able to quickly tap in and tap out whenever needed. But she won't like get up half like, say I need to go like for 5 minutes. We've been sitting for an hour. She'll just be there and she's there. She's just like, and she doesn't need to be. She's Sakshi Tanwar.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
even Zeenat Aman, man, like she is just like so just this. I think with life you understand what's important, and then you try to live in a space that is life affirming. They live in spaces that are life affirming, and they live
True.
with this genuine sense of respect and love for everyone around them. And that's the basic thing. And that's it's very simple, but also very hard to do.
Yeah.
That's why.
Very well articulated. Honestly, I couldn't agree more there. But I think on a final note, like we coming back, you've been the face of the digital sort of revolution that's happening in India. Like you said, you've got so many series and contents coming up on the web. But I think if there is one thing that I can also say is that, people often debate that audiences are audiences. It doesn't matter whether you're in cinema and or the web. But I think the way one consumes content on the web to the cinema is very different. And I think you as an artist, the identity that you have in cinema and on the web are also very different. Does that ever concern you about how should you, for example, make a film that is more, don't want to use the word mainstream, but that's more theatrical, let's so to speak. Are you ever fearful about how they might perceive you or the sort of work that you might have to go to or do for the sake of getting a mainstream presence?
Yeah, I think I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity and a way to increase my toolkit because it's not like better or worse. It might not be a sensibility that immediately comes to me, but it is within me and needs to be trained and needs to be worked on. Um, Things maybe go to theaters because they have a certain sensibility and they have a certain script and a certain requirement. And it's on me and it's on my journey as an actor and as a person to be able to meet those requirements and to grow into those requirements and to be able to do all of it because that's where real growth lies.
Hmm,
So I'm not concerned about the types of scripts. I mean, of course, like, they're different than what OTT can be. Uh, but that in itself is exciting because they are different,
hmm.
So that's, yeah.
Thank you so much, Vihan. I've genuinely really enjoyed speaking with you. I think it's been so special to have your interview, and I think honestly, I think we're definitely in for a treat. I think for your upcoming projects, and I'm very very keen to see how you're going to portray them and what the characters have in store for you. So thank you so much for joining us on Filme Shilmy. It's been
Thanks for having me, dude. It
so
was so
wonderful.
nice to talk to you. I hope I see you again.
Yeah, definitely. No, 100%. Definitely looking forward to more interactions with you for sure. So thank you so much, and wishing you all the very best.
Thank you, man. Take care. I hope you have a good day.
Thank you, you too. Thank you, Vihan.